All right, good afternoon, evening to all of those in the PHU Dynasty League. This is episode 20. We are now on 20, Alex. How do you feel about that? We got a bunch of these.
It's awesome that we've kept the streak going for so long. I wasn't sure after the first few podcasts where we were going to go, and after all the off-season hoopla. But no, I'm glad we're here. This is great that we've kept this going. I really hope that I can continue to be a part of this for years to come. I love it. I
Yeah, I
come
feel
home
like
come home early just for this.
I feel like the podcast has taken on a life of its own within the Dynasty League. So I'm glad that people enjoy it and seem to find it worthwhile enough to
Yes.
keep coming on.
So much so that I delayed posting the schedule for next week for my team. I was like, this takes
Delay your
precedence.
rebuild. Just keep delaying everything. Why don't you? Just delay everything. Flights are delayed for Southwest. Everything's
It's all
delayed.
about the long game.
Everything's delayed. All right, so this is episode 20. This is going to be our mid-season roundup. We're through the halfway point in the season, for the regular season at least, here at week 8. So we've completed 7 games. There's 7 more to go for the regular season. And then week 15 will be the start of the playoffs. So we're going to start this off pretty much we're going to do a base overview for each team through the first half of the season. We've had 5 weeks since our last podcast, so that would be quite a bit of information for one podcast. So we're going to just hit some headlines. We're going to see where each team sits as it stands right now. And hopefully we'll get some quality discussion about some of the ups and downs for each teams that we see in the headlines. So we can start right off here, Alex, with the 10th place team, which should come to nobody's surprise, is the Chili Cheese Fries, in full rebuild mode right now. And it appears that their rebuild is reflecting in the stat sheet. 636 points through 7 weeks. However, there's been zero sweat here for Adam Thibodeau and the Cheese Fries, because he has been beaten down by every team that he's played. It seems like he is the most points against, has played the hardest schedule on top of already stinking. So there has been not even a question whether or not he was going to lose his games. There was no sweat over worrying about winning a game. So no matter what he throws out there, it seems like he's just going to get the shit beat out of him every week. So that's pretty good for Tibbs. So as I mentioned, he is 0-7. He has 636 points for, and then 1,039 against. That's the most in the league. And he pretty much is the least points, hardest schedule. And then I'm putting out there that week 10, he has a huge matchup in what some might consider to be the Tankathon, the Tank Bowl, against the Muskrats. I don't know if he's going to win enough games to even get to 2 wins at this point to contend with you for a second place there, perhaps. But it's going to be a heavily scrutinized game. I'm going to charter legal services vice president Justin Senior for that game to make sure everybody's doing their part to make sure there's a competitive nature to that game. So how do you feel about the Cheese Fries, and where they stand in this, or where they sit in the standings right now?
Well, I mean, no, it's no surprise that they're in 10th place. I mean, but that was part of the design. He, essentially traded all his talented players and just went full rebuild. So that's what you expect. The numbers he's putting up, it's not going to be impossible for him to squeak a win unintentionally or two. Especially after last week, I actually noticed some of the point totals that other teams have been putting up, and there was a few bye weeks already that have kind of hurt a lot of teams in fantasy in general, given that so many high-powered offices were on a bye, like the Cowboys. Teams like
Last
that.
week was Bye-Mageddon. It was
It
terrible.
was bad. Everybody was feeling it. So I guess this probably would have been one of the weeks that he could have snuck one if he wanted to. But it is what it is. His team's bad right now. I don't understand, if anything, if he's going to be continuing getting the top priority, why he's not grabbing these 3 or 4 week gems of players and just trade them off immediately for whatever you can get. Why bother keeping them on your roster at that point? If they're going to help you win, then why not just dump them? But, he does his way. I do it my way. That is what it is. So not much else I can say about him. He's bad.
Yeah, it's a bad team. And I have the headlines here for the cheese fries. And it's, Elijah Mitchell, starting for the 49ers and for Tibbs' team. There's a few guys that we're going to go through the list here real quick that all really have that value. Like you mentioned, why not just try to move some of these guys perhaps while their value is still high, because this team truly isn't really going anywhere anytime soon. So Elijah Mitchell kind of leads the pack there. Nobody really thought anything of Elijah Mitchell at all during the offseason. Was pretty much behind everybody's favorite Trey Sermon throughout the offseason, and just shows up and just takes the job in classic Kyle Shanahan fashion. And has actually looked really good though. So it's like, it's not like he's playing like shit and still getting the starting job. He had his injuries, still came back and balled out. So, Tibbs, I mean, if you want to hold on to him, that's great. I don't think that's what he wants to do, but I think he's just waiting for bigger offers at this point.
Maybe, yeah.
And I think the same could be said for a guy like Dawson Knox too, having a huge breakout season so far, especially in the first 4 weeks before his injury. I had him on my roster pretty much all off season. I always liked the guy, but I just felt like prior to me dropping him, my thought process was like, he didn't do it last year. He had plenty of targets. He didn't do it the year before. He had plenty of targets. Like, when is it going to happen? And I just decided on the fact that it was never going to happen. And then as soon as I drop him, he breaks out. So it's just science. So that's another guy, like in a league that, we do. Everybody needs tight ends to compete with that top echelon of tight ends. And once you get past 4, as we mentioned prior to the season, it gets kind of murky. But it seems like nowadays it's kind of actually clearing up a little bit. With another guy on this list too, Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz and Dawson Knox are both in the top 6 of tight ends, I think, as it stands right now, which is pretty wild to think about.
Yeah, well, I'll say this about...
hey, real quick, Alex, while you're talking about those two, I'm going to shut my blinds because it looks like the angel that is James Robinson is trying to come through my window right now.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, James Robinson. Now the year. Oh, we're getting there. Make sure left and the right. There we got it.
I thought that was Brandon Ayuk coming back from the dead.
Well, he's resurrection. Dalton Schultz, obviously the Cowboys have a high-powered offense now, but it's, balanced with running and passing. I would think with I'm sorry. I'm so, my brain's so fried from work. I'm forgetting people's names on my favorite team. Holy moly!
You talking about Jarwin?
No, they're wide receiver. Jesus.
CeeDee Lamb?
No, the guy has been hurt.
Cedric Wilson? Amari Cooper?
No, the other wide receiver. Jesus Christ.
Michael Gallup?
Yes, Michael Gallup. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I would think once he gets back, we're going to see flashes of Dalton Schultz here and there, depending on the matchups. But I don't know. I don't know if I would rely on that in week in, week out fantasy production. I'm still a little skeptical, and it looks good right now, but there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed, and I'm sure he's going to get you some big games, but he's also going to hurt you some weeks too. So.
Yeah, I feel like that offense kind of runs through one person each week, it seems like, as far as targets. Even CeeDee Lamb has had a couple of games where he hasn't been as targeted as much as other ones. So could be a little up and down. And then the last guy on this list, Khalil Herbie the Love Bug. He was a guy, like, when we were talking about rookie drafts last year, people were pretty high on him, go at the end of the first round, maybe high second round, ends up going to what looked like a pretty terrible situation preseason. It's another nice disclaimer to always take the talented guys.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, granted, even regardless of the situation in the backfield, the team itself is just not very good. So take what you will. Until they fix the offensive line, I think the ceiling is capped. But yeah, I mean, he might get some opportunities here and there. I don't know with when the running back gets back. Oh my God,
David Montgomery.
I'm having
This
senior
man.
moments left and right today. Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry.
This man.
But yeah, we'll see. It's just one of those. He's one of those guys that he looks good right now, but who knows what's going to happen with the Bears. It's a team I can't trust. So until they fix their offensive woes and their coaching on top of that, so we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, they have all kinds of issues outside of their running game. Actually, their running game is probably the best part of that team at this point. Yeah, so we'll just wrap up the cheese fries. We know we know it's a rough go for them. I'm intrigued to see Week 10. That's probably the most exciting game on the schedule for this squad moving forward. But let's go to Team 9. I think you know that one pretty well. Hopefully you do. Hopefully your brain's not fried enough for this. It's the Muskrats coming in at 9.
Wait, I'm not one. What is?
So we got a 2-5 team. We got two W's on the board. Scoring 741 points, and you're going against 905. So you have the 9th most points, which aligns pretty well with the standings, and then the 4th easiest schedule. And you are 105 points ahead of the cheese fries. If it comes down to the point battle towards the end of the year, that might be important, but not right now. Got to see if Tibbs can scrape together 2 wins before that even gets to that point.
Yeah.
Anywho, let's talk about some headlines for your squad. Obviously, the Najee Harris emergency podcast trade was the biggest headline of this season so far. It really changed the trajectory of this squad for 2021 and kind of sent it back towards the rebuilding side of things. It's been a week or two removed from that. How are you feeling about that now?
Of course, he had a couple of solid games. I mean, Pittman did exactly what I expected him to do. He had one kind of a dud of a week, but he's been getting to production. And again, like I mentioned before, I needed that one extra wide receiver that felt like he had a lot of room to grow. So I think that's where we're at right now with Michael Pittman. Like I said, he's been playing well. You know what? Let me do some research because it's been a few weeks since I actually looked to see where he was.
So Harris has RB10 on the year. He's had his last 2 games were 21 points and 18 points, so pretty good. On top of having 12 targets over those 2 weeks, he had I forgot about that 19 target game he had in week 3. 14 catches. Actually, there was in the early days of the PHU Dynasty League, Alex, I don't know if you remember this or not, but this was maybe with the FGCU college guys. We had a special designation for running backs that caught 15 balls in a game. Do you remember what that was called?
No, I don't think I was a part of that.
We called that a PPR legend. So if you reach, I think we set it up because there was a game where Roy Helu caught 15 passes. Yeah, and we called him a PPR legend at that point. I think Darren Sproles did it. So then it's kind of stuck around, and then it turned into receiving for receivers. If they had 20 catches, then they were a PPR legend. And that was a Brandon Marshall, I think, did that one way back in the day. But anywho,
yes,
he was teetering on PPR legend status in week 3 with 14 catches. Couldn't pull in one more to get to that elite level, but yeah, Harris, he's gonna be a good back with the volume he's had, and if you didn't feel that's the kind of guy that you wanted to keep around and just move towards the future, then that's what it's gonna be basically.
Yeah, I like I said, with getting Pittman and the 2 picks, which looks like at this point is the next year's is going to be high. first round pick, which I'm excited about. So we'll see how the fall of Dustin goes the rest of the season. But yeah, with Pittman, he's at what 20? I just
I think
looked
it was
at
22 or something.
He's 22 right now. That's 5 points from 17, and if he continues to get consistent targets each week, solidify himself as a 2, and then again room to grow to be a 1. As he's second year in his league. There's no reason to see why he can't potentially be a back end 1 or a high 2, going forward, and especially as other guys tend to start to slip over the course of time. So, I feel good about it. I mean, obviously you always want to have that bell cow running back, but if I can get another running back close to that production and get another wide receiver or additional running back, and on top of the Michael Pittman, I feel like I did okay. So I don't.
Gotcha.
I think I also gave a Cole Kmet Bears offense.
Yeah, it hasn't looked like much so far.
Yeah. And then Tony Pollard, maybe he goes to another team and becomes the guy, but doesn't look like it to this point. So
no, I wouldn't worry about the 2 throw-ins there. And going back to running back, you got Deandre Swift, 22-year-old running back, has been fantastic as this, for the first half of this year. He's RB6 right now. His last 3 games have been 16, 12, and 20. He is in that very exclusive group of running backs that seem to be getting 6 to 7 targets a game on top of, other touches on the ground. He's been great. I guess my question to you is, are you considering moving Swift at this point to continue this rebuild, or is he going to be kind of one of those cogs that you're going to keep around?
Yeah, he seems to be more on the cogs they're going to keep around. Young, he's super ultra talented, and I got him in the 7th overall in that draft because he went to the Lions, and I was like, I saw the talent. Sometimes I wasn't sure about the usage, but he ended up panning out really well. Like I said, I had my reservations about Najee Harris. He's he does everything well. He put himself. I mean, the rushing attack's been nothing to be desired about. I mean, granted, he's getting his goal line work, but outside of that, a lot of his work's been in the passing game. And once Ben, they finally can his ass. Who fills in? Is that going to be that same kind of guy that's going to be checking it down, or we're going to have a quarterback that's like, oh, I'm young, I can toss a deep ball, I don't need to give to Najee Harris, 15 times in the passing game. So
yeah, I like Swift a lot, and to me, he's one of the guys just based on age alone. He's 22. Out of the 2, if you were going to trade Najee Harris or Swift, I think you traded the right guy. I think I'd rather have Swift in your situation as a longer term rebuild as opposed to Harris, who's 24 already and still faces a little bit of uncertainty with the offense. So
sure,
I like Swift a lot.
Sure.
Then in the headlines, we got Ruggs improving in year 2. So obviously you love Henry Ruggs. I have not up until I still don't even love him, actually. What am I saying?
That's fine.
I'm lying to myself. He's wide receiver 25. He's played very well this year based on my expectations. He's been getting more consistent targets. I think the first 4 games he had over 5 targets each game. It's kind of dipped in the last few weeks. But his targets are quality targets. He's averaging almost 20 yards a catch. He's doing what you think he should be doing as this, smaller, faster receiver. To me, he's kind of giving me some Marquise Brown vibes. Marquise Brown in his first couple of years didn't really have that consistency, but there was a few games over here and there where it's like, holy shit, he blew up. And then now, Marquise Brown has really taken that step forward. So maybe, year 3, Ruggs kind of gets to that next level. But right now, he's still serviceable. I mean, he's dropped 18 points, 8 points, 15, 6, 5. So none of those are dump games where, you look at him in your lineup and be like, holy shit, this guy's trash.
Right. And given that
which is what I thought he might be.
Yeah, and given that he's like my fourth or fifth wide receiver, putting up that production, that was the
That's
money
fine. That's
for me.
acceptable. Totally
Yeah, I
acceptable.
was good with that. So I understood where you guys are coming from. Like, oh, he's another fast guy that's gonna be a bust, and I was like, hey, if I can at least get like that, maybe not the Deshaun Jackson level, but those boomer bust weeks out of him, I was okay with that. So now that I'm getting consistent production from him on a weekly basis is all I could have ever asked for. I hope it keeps up. I hope his body keeps up. Granted, in today's league, guys like that, I don't have to worry about getting into the muck with injuries so much. They get a lot of protection that they didn't get even 5 years ago. So yeah, the sky's looking up as long as they keep getting him in the game plan. I know Darren Waller seems to have gotten a lot of attention, so it makes it a lot easier. So it's really good.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, and I'm just realizing now the graphic wasn't up this entire time, so that's fun.
It's not true.
So let's skip ahead now that you just said that. Jalen Waddle's kind of in that same boat. He's looked really solid in some flash games. A couple of games where he was hyper targeted. He had 12 catches and 10 catches in a couple of games. He's along the same lines of Ruggs is that kind of developmental boomer bust guy early in his career. Maybe it'll turn into something a little bit later. But let's talk about Drew Lock. Why the fuck is he still on your team?
Dude, I just like the kid's charisma.
You just like him because he did that DMX shit on the sideline.
That's part of it. But when he did have the reins, I don't know. There's the swagger that he had that I really appreciated, and I've been waiting for Teddy Bridgewater to be super boring and lose games for them until like he finally gets that chance to show. And I feel bad for Drew Lock because he was evaluated based off the little talent that he did have, and he never really got to show what he could do with healthy receivers. So I just don't want to give up on him yet. I think obviously he's got his cons being very wild throwing the football, but if he can get all those weapons healthy and being able to utilize them, I think he makes for a very intriguing fantasy play if he's given the starting job. Because
he's also a guy too. Like next year, he might end up on some other team. Let's say he goes like Pittsburgh next year or some shit. That could work.
Yeah, especially with Pittsburgh being on that kind of that range where they're not going to get a high draft pick, and they're kind of like in the middle. So like, do they take a chance on a guy that they grab in the 20s in the first round, or go for a guy that at least has a little experience and take a chance on a couple of dudes like Drew Lock? So yeah, that could play out well, or Drew Lock could just be sitting in the cellar, for the rest of his career. But again, I have a soft spot for him, so I'll give him some time.
Nice roster clogger for sure. All right, so that was the Muskrats. Let's go ahead to the Lampposts at number 8. And I know Dan can't be very happy about being in this position currently. He's got the 8th most points, the 4th hardest schedule. He is 195 points ahead of you. So this is where things get really interesting in this league, because we have 8 teams total. 7 teams that are within like 30 points to 40 points of each other. And so you have the Battle Axes sitting at second place with 972. Then the Swallows with 982. Then the Lambs with 971. Then the Long Gamers with 955. Then the Bombers with 967. Elk with 947. And the Lampposts with 936. So all of those go from 2 from 8 on the standings and are separated by like 40 points, which shows you just how competitive this league is and just how solid the parity is from week to week, just seeing who's going to win and who's not going to win. So like, for example, you have the Lamppost at 936 at 2 and 5, and then the long gamers are at 9:55, and they're 5-2. So it's like it really shows you how important the schedule is when the teams are this close. So
yeah, absolutely. And then you got to look at the teams that haven't got a chance to beat up on Tibbs and myself versus the guys that already have. So I think that
some teams get to play you twice, like me.
Yeah,
exciting.
Yeah. So you I don't know, we get some schedule manipulation there, but
hey, I would love that. Imagine if like, so I know Sleeper does like all the shit, like when we start, like you have to renew the league or whatever, so they puts it all in. This year everybody was so excited because the first round matchups were all like against your rivals, but nobody was really even thinking about who's playing the shitty teams for the first couple of weeks because they get to play them again. But I'm wondering if in the future, if we should do some sort of like schedule release podcast or something like that, like because you know how they do the schedule release shows or whatever. Like, that'd be hilarious. But anyway,
the schedule. That'd definitely be interesting to do.
I think it shows.
I think in the past, I've tried to do schedule manipulation with Yahoo, and it was the most frustrating thing in the world.
Oh, do you remember when we tried to do that for the regular league? We tried to put in like, because you have to build the schedule from scratch essentially. You start from week 1. And then, like, if anything is messed up, it jacks up all the schedule for the rest of the year. So it really takes a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, they had the schedule matrix, and it was fucking miserable.
I remember it was like red and green when things were right and wrong, and everything was red 90% of the time. I was like, I just want these people to play during this week. Because I remember we had to try to have rivalry weeks, like at week 8 and such shit like that, like right before the playoffs, and it just never worked out. No. Anywho. Yes, the parity in this league is insane. The lamppost obviously can't be happy about this placement, but let's talk about some headlines. So DK Metcalf, obviously a stud. I wanted to see if he was going to be a stud for a second straight year, and he has definitely lived up to that. He is elite. He was wide receiver 5 last year. He's wide receiver 8 this year. He's had a bunch of double-digit games this year, had a 20-point game this year. He's a stud. He's a dynasty stud, and I will not question that any further. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he's quarterback-proof, so it doesn't matter who's throwing the ball to him. He's going to produce. He's just that good of a football player. You got that good of an athlete. Definitely a wide receiver you want to have on your team. So, the kind of measurables that I used to go for so many years, and they always burn me. So like the one time I don't go for him, it's like, oh, he's like one of the best wide receivers in the league. Like, go figure. You go for those. Who were those? Some of those asshats that had
those Green Beckhams,
John Baldwin,
Baldwin,
fucking dudes like that. And then it's like, oh,
I did the same shit.
Yeah, like, and then
Devin
it's like,
Funchess.
Yeah, and then you don't want to go for those guys.
Hakeem Butler. I tried. I did not get it. Yeah, DK Metcalf was the guy before the draft that I still can't even believe that he went at pick like 63 in the real NFL draft. Like, how stupid is everybody just take a shot? Like, somebody take a shot, because it's just he was too athletically talented to not at least try. Because if you're gonna try on guys like we're talking about, fucking John Baldwin was a first round pick, I think.
Yeah.
Like, if he was a first round pick, how the fuck was DK Metcalf not? It's something doesn't add up there.
I mean, if he went in the first round, I would have took him. But when you do your dynasty rookie mock drafts, you kind of go based off draft capital. And if he's sitting there and like was pick 63, you're like, maybe there is something wrong with him, and maybe he is one of those clowns that does everything right athletically, but then on the football field they suck. And it's like, why take a chance? And then you get assholes like me. It's like, oh, let me just go for Mecole Hardman instead of 1.5.
No, not Mecole. Not Mecole. All right, we're moving on to running back Rodeo. So that is been an interesting spot for Dan this year. He's had Antonio Gibson, Dalvin Cook. He also has a couple injured guys out there, J.K. Dobbins, and I believe he had another one. He had Damian Williams, who got hurt. He had Kenny and Drake, who's banged up a little bit. He's had all kinds of running back ups and downs for the last few. I think he had Devontae Booker as well. So he's had all these different running backs in and out of the lineup. Has definitely been something that has affected his ability to get consistent production out of that position. So
Absolutely.
I'm intrigued to see over the last quarter of the season, or at least the last quarter of the season, can some of these running backs just stay more consistent? Antonio Gibson hasn't been quite as advertised, I think. I believe he's RB 18. So, I mean, he's had some good weeks. He had weeks 3 through 5. He had 16, 13, 19. In the last 2 weeks, he's had 2 and 5. So he's been a little all over the map. I'd like to see some more consistency out of him.
Sure. Yeah, he's borderline RB3 at this point, and in this league, you get what you can take, but it's certainly not going to add up to wins, unfortunately, especially if you're again a schedule like depending on who he's been playing doesn't certainly help.
Yep, but with that hard schedule, those definitely don't make anything easier. We could go ahead and talk about Rondale Moore real quick. He's looked pretty damn good when he gets the ball. I mean, I was a little skeptical just based on his size, but there has never, and I think I said this in the rookie draft podcast that we did, there's never been a person in the league with his measurables at his position and his like overall athletic profile. He is one of one. So if they find ways to keep getting him the ball, he's going to be very good for fantasy. Just it seems like in the short term, with AJ Green actually looking decent, Christian Kirk having a career year, DeAndre Hopkins being DeAndre Hopkins, there's just not a lot of work for him right now. So I think you have to wait a little while for him, but it's looking really good for the future on that one. Speaking of former players for you, Mark Andrews looking goddamn good. What do you think about Mark Andrews, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, he was gonna. I knew the slow start wasn't gonna be a long-term thing. Again, I love Andrews. I didn't know as far as like long-term, and I'm talking about like years, what to expect from him. I knew he was going to be fine for this year. I didn't think he was going to be where he was at the moment, but that's fantasy football for you. But he just didn't really fit my long-term plans, and I really liked this particular draft, and I had to let him go. But hey, he's doing well, and I'm happy for him. I'm happy for
you happy
Dan.
for the kid. You gotta be happy for the kid.
Love to Mark Andrews, but had to let him go.
Yeah, he even got a nickname for you. Usually players with nicknames don't leave the team.
No,
that's always been my MO. If I have a player with a nickname, that means he's around. He's sticking around. Let's talk about Keenan Allen real quick. He's taken a big step back this year, quietly actually. Not a lot of people are really talking about it, but Mike Williams has blown up. Obviously, that's what's being talked about. But Keenan Allen, after having the first 3 weeks of 11, 11, and 11, which is pretty insane, has had weeks of 3, 7, and 5. And that's kind of been a downtick as opposed to the rest of his career. I think he's wide receiver 18 right now. He finished at 11, 15, 19, and then as of right now, he's wide receiver 38. So it's a little bit lower than what you're used to seeing out of Keenan Allen. I don't know. I think it's going to be a little bit of this is going to become the norm if these other players such as Austin Eckler, such as Mike Williams step up and actually keep looking good. There's probably just going to be less work for Allen. So I feel like that's contributing a little bit to Dan's overall point totals this year. That's probably just one of the lesser headlines of his team, but it is something that's important to his overall roster makeup.
Yeah, and that kind of I'll say that you hear a lot of chatter about what offenses are going to do prior to the season starting, and you heard the rumors that hey, Mike Williams, the offense is going to be catering to someone of his of his play style. And, a lot of times people ignore that. It's like, oh, yeah, we hear that stuff all the time. And, this is one of those times it just happened to be true where, Mike Williams was going to be the guy in that offense, and sure enough, that's what ended up being the case. So I think it's more offensive scheme that's kind of hurting him right now. I don't know how that's going to affect his long-term value. I don't know how long he's going to be on the team for, or even if I don't know if he starts to decline by the time he moves somewhere else. But eventually Dan's going to have to start finding a replacement for him. It looks like I don't see it getting better.
Yeah, and that's you hate to see that too, because Keenan Allen's nobody dislikes Keenan Allen, right? Like he's always been one of those guys that's like, oh, we all like Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and move on to the Elk at 2-5 as well. There's one more 2-5 team, so there's 3 of those in this clump here. He's got 947 points for, 987 points against. He's had the 3rd hardest schedule and the 7th most points. And he is just 20 points behind the 6th seed for that playoff spot behind the Bombers. So that is definitely a spot that's up for grabs. Obviously, we still have plenty of time before the season's over. Headlines. Alvin Kamara is really good. I don't think anybody will say no to that or disagree with you on that. However, this year he literally is their entire offense. He is just the engine that keeps that entire offense going. Jameis Winston honestly still kind of looks like Jameis Winston at this point. I thought there was going to be like a resurgence, just out of the bottom of my heart, but it's not happening. Yeah, it's just not happening. So you know what you're getting out of him, but Kamara has been electric. He's always been great, but this year it just feels like he is so important to that Saints team. If Kamara got hurt, like what happens to the Saints? They would be horrific. They'd be one of the worst teams in the league, in my opinion.
What happens to Dustin? And the answer is he gives me a high draft pick.
I disagree. Dustin has the deep, and I think I put it on here on his last headline, has one of the deepest running back rooms by far. It's not even really close. He has done a great job of getting depth into this room. He's got Damian Harris. He's got Zach Moss, Najee Harris, Tony Pollard, Phillip Lindsay. Quality guys. And he's got David Montgomery, who's out, and Kareem Hunt, who's out. So all those guys are very playable options.
Well, he's had them, but he's 2-5. And I know based off your analysis, they're hard scheduled, but he's played Tibbs and I already, and he's 2-5. So
it must have been a couple of blow up weeks there. I think I murdered him one week.
Right, and I think it's one of those. I think he just has one of those teams that's going to be very volatile, where he's going to be putting up big numbers, and then he's just going to fall flat on his face. And when you're in a league that needs wins, more than anything, like having a nice point total is fine. But Sean's a perfect example. He had like the 9th lowest scoring, offense, for the season, and he made it to the championship. So at the end of the day, you need wins, and if your team is too up and down like that, it's just not gonna. It's not a recipe for success. And banking on having a hot streak more times than not is probably not going to work.
Yeah, it really is about getting hot at that playoff time, and I really think this is a team if they can hang around and keep kind of pushing towards getting to that last playoff spot and get in. Like I would be a little bit nervous to play this team just because. Some of these guys, if they all get hot at the right time, definitely have the option or possibility to make a run. And one of the guys that's been down for the early part of the year is Calvin Ridley. He hasn't really. I think he was missed a couple of weeks with personal issues, and he had the Jets game and the bye week last week. So other games, he hasn't scored any more than 8 points outside of the Bucks game where he scored 12. So it's been 5, 12, 6, 8, 0, 8. And that's definitely not anywhere near what he was giving you last year. However, he has a very healthy amount of targets. He gets 10 targets a game basically every time he's on the field. That offense has looked better in recent weeks, also because they've been playing crappier teams, to be honest.
Yeah,
the Giants, they played Washington, the Jets, and Miami.
Oh, they didn't play Jaguars. I'm sorry.
So it's been a light schedule, put it that way. So maybe there's still upside for that Atlanta offense, but right now it's not been a good ride for for Ridley. So that's, a guy that Dustin was expecting to blow up and give him significantly more points than like 5 or 6 a week that have kind of probably had a big impact on this 2-5 record. Let's talk about Kaziris Tony. Nobody liked him. I didn't fucking like him. He literally went 3rd round. He was a 30.1. Nobody wanted any part of him.
Or the Giants, for that matter.
Yeah, he went to the Giants. And honestly, I'll be totally honest. I would have taken Tony if he wasn't on the Giants. I just can't do any more Giants players. I'm already trying to get rid of the ones I have. I don't want any more. If he ended up on any other team, I probably would have taken him. However, I didn't. So here we are. It's 3.1. Kadarius Tony has actually looked really good in the times that he's been able to be on the field and when he's not punching people. He's looked pretty good. So, I mean, kudos to Dustin for having the nuts to just take him, even though it was the 3rd round. It's like you can't let that guy slip any further.
No, of course not.
He's looked really good. So that's an uptick for the youth of this team. He's also got quite a few other rookie wide receivers. He's got Devontae Smith, Rashad Bateman. He has some guys that really we haven't seen any of their full potential yet. So this could be a really good draft class for him.
Yeah, I would say he might have nailed it, but we'll see in a couple of years.
And we kind of talked about Najee Harris in the running back room, so we can go ahead and move on to the 6th team, which it just pains me every year that we have to talk about Justin getting bamboozled, hoodwinked, however you want to say it. He can't seem to get a hand, as they used to say in our poker group. He's got the 2nd hardest schedule. Last year, I'm pretty sure he had the hardest schedule. He's 5th most in points, so he's kind of right around where he needs to be in the standings. However, 2-5 with 1,019 points against. It's a rough go for Justin. And the crazy thing is that he's 2-5 in 6th place, and he's only 45 points behind before me in our overall. It's just crazy. That being said, the headline and the obvious headline is Jamar Chase, and I'm happy that you're on to talk about this because
oh boy, this is why I was called. This
may or may not have been one of the reasons I brought you on, because I wanted to talk about Jamar Chase. This man looked like an absolute pile of dog shit in the preseason. He couldn't catch. He was scared to go over the middle. He said that he was concerned about the difference between the white stripe in the ball from the NCAA ball to the NFL ball. Literally, it sounded horrific. It sounded like the worst case scenario.
He tried to sandbag everybody. Is what he did.
He was sandbag. He was totally sandbagging. That's exactly what this is. This is the Hollywood special.
Yeah.
Sure, why not? So he just goes out in week 1, explodes, and he is not slowed down whatsoever at any point during this time frame. And I've seen posts on Reddit about him being the number 1 dynasty asset overall. I mean, what do you make of this, Alex? Do you this is you did not take this man, and you had the opportunity to. So I want you to back this up somehow.
Well, I go it wasn't like I didn't like him, and it's in another dynasty league that we both are in. I have him right now. It wasn't a question of not liking his talent or not thinking that he had potential to be great. It was more of, what. And this is something that we talked about, and I think one of the last podcasts is, who is my competition going to be in 5 years? And granted, Eric, you've found a way to stay competitive over the last 7 anyway, but you sold a lot of your future to make sure you stay good, competitive for the next 3 years, right? 3-5 year window. If I had let Justin take Najee Harris and then have someone like Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase, who I would ever end up with, and the idea was I was going to take Pitts originally. He would have had Jamar Chase and Najee Harris anyway. So for me, it was like I had to take a risk and let him, take obviously Jamar Chase and then get a tight end that wasn't really going to help his overall, numbers because he already had a tight end, Hawkinson, right? So is he playing both tight ends each week? Probably not. So
When one of
instead
them's
of
a wide
him,
receiver, then maybe he will.
yeah, right. But
Pitts isn't even a tight end.
But he's not getting the full potential of the points that he could be getting from two players, and now he's just getting them from one. So, I had to make a strategic move and kind of damper him having two really good running backs or three really good running backs, and one of those was wide receivers and tight ends. Now he just has, a wide receiver that basically is replacing the production that he was getting out of Michael Thomas because he's been non-existent. So again, he's great that he has Jamar Chase, and I'm sure he's going to be great for many years. But he's basically replacing what we had in Michael Thomas when Michael Thomas was in his prime. So he's still good. He's still in the same boat, and that's why he's 2-5. And granted, maybe the schedule or whatever, but there's a reason why he keeps sitting in these positions year after year because he's not maximizing the potential of getting as many players on the field, putting up points rather than just kind of, replacing what he already has and still being in the same spot.
Interesting to hear that take. Hadn't really put that much thought into it, but I'm glad you have. Because you kind of have to at this point when you see these two guys kind of exploding, I guess. But
when you're not worried about winning, you think about like where
you worry about other
in
people's
5 years
shit.
winning.
When you haven't worried about winning in the last 3 years, you probably have a lot of time to ponder and think on Sundays.
Yeah,
so I understand.
If one day I'm going to be winning, what do I have to deal with then?
I get it. Another guy on Justin's team that's bounced back big time this year is Zeke. He's been awesome this year, and truthfully, I wanted no part of him in redraft because he burned me so bad last year. But he's been running back 4. Hasn't had a game under double digits since week 1 against the Bucks. He's been 15, 23, 21, 24, and 11. He's been pretty much fire. He's the number 4 overall running back. So good bounce back for him there. Kyle Pitts had a pretty average start to his first 3 games. I have him in redraft, so I've been pretty close to his situation. He is. I'm telling people. I've said it, like before we even got to this point in the season. This man is not a tight end. He's a wide receiver. He's a unicorn. This is a guy that, like, yes, his value was just stupid high coming out, but it was all for a good reason. This guy is good. So now that you had a couple of big games from him back to back, I think he had 119 yards against the Jets and then 163 against Miami. I mean, those aren't tight end numbers. That's not what happens with tight ends. They don't get 169 yards. So this man is a beast. I wish I could have him on my team somehow. It's just not really in the cards. This is a man that's going to be great for years to come. So
Sure.
I love it. I love it for Justin, for him to get Chase and Pitts on top of having Burrow, who we didn't talk about. Burrow is really taking a step forward this year. He's QB8. I was a little bit concerned coming into the year whether or not he was going to be like a go-to fantasy guy. I thought he was going to kind of end up in that Kirk Cousins, somewhere between Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr, like 10 to 15, something like that. But QB8 is exceeding my expectations.
Yeah, I felt like if Jamar Chase lived up to the original hype he had before preseason, I felt like he was going to be close to that range. I didn't think that he would be at 8, despite T. Higgins doing nothing now, and Jamar Chase getting all the glory, which really hurts my feelings because I really like T. Higgins. And
yeah, I'm a T. Higgins fan too, and I don't think this is the end of T. Higgins. I think teams are going to figure out, what can we do to minimize Chase's impact, and then because of that, then you'll see stuff rolled over to Higgins. Higgins is a good player. That's just my opinion, but
yeah. I just I feel like he's going to be in the shadow of Chase, obviously, for the rest of his career there in Cincinnati until he goes off on his own. But we'll see.
I mean, one was the fourth overall pick. The other one, I think Higgins was a second round pick. So it's not really. They're like not even in the same echelon really as each other as far as like prospects, like when they were coming out. So
Sure.
Let's keep moving along. Keep this going. Marquise Brown, obviously having a huge season. Nobody is blind to that. He went from wide receiver 31 last year. He's number 5 this year. He's had huge games and extremely consistent too. 13, 18, 5, 15, 25, 3, and 14. So he's only posted 2, quote, duds, if you will, so far this year. He's got a bye this week. But he's been great, and I've been one of his biggest doubters, along with a couple other random jackasses in this league. I am totally wrong on him. He looks like a new guy this year as opposed to his first 2 years in the league. So good for him. Let's keep rolling to number 5, and that's going to be the Long Gamers, who have the 6th most points and the 3rd easiest schedule. And he has less points than Justin, who's below him in the rankings and also has 3 more wins than him. So that is just truly unfortunate to see if you're a Bombers fan out there from Baton Rouge. But last year, Sean snuck into the playoffs, got to the championship game. This year, he's 5-2. It's looking like a pretty good bet to actually get in with a little bit more ease this year. But he's going to have to start putting up more consistent points in case things kind of turn around for some of those 2-5 teams to come up and take spots away from some of these guys that might falter towards the end of the year. Let's go ahead and Jonathan Taylor's a damn stud, and I called him generational. I believe I got a lot of shit for that, but I still believe. I think you were one of the ones that gave me shit for that. Speaking of,
yeah, I did not. I think his production was inflated just because of the team he was on in college. Was it Wisconsin?
Yep.
No. Yep. And he ended up in a good situation. You know, don't get me wrong. I just don't know if he'd be as productive on other teams, but he's in a good spot. They've had offensive line woes, and I guess he's still produced. So,
and the crazy thing too is, like, I mean, Carson Wentz is an okay quarterback, but he's not a scary quarterback for defenses. Teams are definitely focusing more on Jonathan Taylor than they are Carson Wentz at this point. And he's still getting it done. He was running back 4 last year. He's running back 2 this year. And he has been insanely efficient. He's never had 20 carries in a game. And he has somehow managed to average 5.51 yards a carry. I mean, that's just insane. Had weeks of 11, 5, 7, 18, 29, 28, 16. He's been very studly, and the 29-point game came against a good defense in Baltimore. The man is good, and I truly believe he's going to be one of these guys that is a stud for a long time, and he's only 22. So looking really good for the Long Gamers. It looks like a great pick that's returning the value on that one.
Sure.
I put Dallas Goedert's free because he's a free man now that Zach Ertz is gone. I'd like to see, how that affects his overall impact on the game with some of those secondary options outside of Devontae Smith being kind of shit still, for the Eagles being Jalen Reagor and like Quez Watkins and Travis Fulgham is even on the. I don't even know if Travis Fulgham's alive. I couldn't even tell you. So yeah, JJ Arcega-Whiteside. Ooh, that's an Alex special.
Oh boy, no, he can't still be on the team.
I think he is.
No.
I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up right now.
Please.
Let's look it up. This is gonna be breaking for some people here.
I don't believe it.
I gotta search his name. Hold on here, folks. This is important stuff. JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
They really like projects then.
He's still on the team.
That's wild.
And he had one target. He had one Wait, how did he get a fantasy point? Hold on a second. This is interesting, folks. Hold on a second.
I don't watch the Eagles either because they're bad.
If you look at Sleeper in the Week 4 match against Kansas City, he played a 15% target or a snap share, and There's no stats anywhere on his page. There's no catches, there's no yards, there's no anything, but he got 1 point somehow. How did this happen? And could he have started on Alex's team?
It's possible.
1 point.
I would say if we had, we would have put N'Keal Harry after this one. Would have been a nice segment. But he has more points than N'Keal Harry right now.
Well, let's go ahead and make that segue right now. To N'Keal Harry, is he the worst pick in our league's history based on production? He has to be. He was the number one pick, right?
Yes, he was.
I'm like 90% sure he was number one.
No, he was number one overall. Yes.
So let's do a quick research into this now. He's wide receiver 146 this year. Big time. He's never been over wide receiver 100 in 3 years. It's not good. He had 300 yards last year. He had 100 yards the year before. This is a Jeff Janis situation. Will he have over 500 yards for his career, Alex?
No.
He's like 60 yards away.
I don't know. It's not gonna happen.
And I'm looking at it right now. He was pick 101.
He's still on the team, though.
He is still on the team. He's still on Sean's team. And at this point, Sean, you can't even release him just because.
Yeah, like, if someone else picks him up and then someone else gets him, and then he starts actually doing something, and then it's like.
Then you feel even worse. You feel like an even bigger jackass. Like if he goes to the Chiefs or some shit and actually like shows up, like you'd be like, oh my god, what have I done?
Yeah,
anyway.
It's like you knocked up the chick at the bar that's hideous, and now you have a kid with them, and it's like, well, you're stuck with them. You're stuck with them. You can't do anything about it. We can't abandon them.
I almost choked on my spit. All right, we spent 2 minutes too long talking about N'Keal Harry. Let's go to some of these other players. DJ Moore, looking great, looking really good.
Love DJ Moore.
I really like him too. I was concerned about his touchdowns. Kind of still am, honestly. He's only had 3 this year. But he's getting tons of work in this offense. He gets like 13 targets a week, it seems like. And he had 3 straight great games. He had a 13, 13, 24, and has kind of fell off a little bit. The last couple of weeks, he had 3, 5, and 7. But this guy looks like a stud. He's only 24. He's attached to a good offensive coordinator, in my opinion. I think Joe Brady's really good. And
agreed.
I mean, Darnold has been better for him, but obviously Darnold has been sketchy in his own way. But he's a wide receiver 12 this year. As he was 17 last year and 22 the year before that. So he's constantly going up. That's what you want to see.
Sure.
Big fan. We already talked about N'Keal Harry for 2 minutes too long. Let's talk about Justin Fields for just a couple of seconds here. He has not looked good. And some of that is his fault. Some of that is the offensive line's fault. Some of that is Matt Nagy's fault.
Sure.
Some of that is David Montgomery not being on the field at the same time as his fault. I mean, there's all kinds of different stuff that's going on here. But usually, with these kind of running quarterbacks, you like to see something early in their career, especially on the ground, that would kind of give you that, like there's that potential is still there, that you kind of just feel good about. And he's still very young. There's plenty of time. But you want to have something to smile about, and there's been nothing to smile about for Justin Fields so far, unfortunately. Let's keep moving on. We'll go to number 4 in the standings, and that is the Los Angeles Lambs at 5-2, 971 points for and 822 against. He's had a pretty easy schedule. He's had the 9th easiest schedule and the 4th most points, so that kind of aligns actually with his overall point numbers. It's crazy to think that he only has 7 more points than the Bombers, who are 2-5. So you'll notice a recurring theme with these. I always just find a way to involve the Bombers getting shit on. It seems like every year it just keeps happening, and this is another one of those. Let's go ahead and get to the headlines. And Justin Herbert, he's good. I mean, I am shocked that he's this good, because coming out, I thought, it's an Oregon quarterback. Oh, he's got the measurables. Oh, he's only does 1 read, because he did. That's all that stuff was true. But it was an obvious case now looking back that this is a case of the Oregon offense just holding him back. Like, they didn't unleash him. They didn't let him cook, if you will.
Yeah,
and he is cooking in the NFL. He has had games of 38 and 51 this year. scattered in between a couple of games that were less than ideal. Specifically last week he had 14 and he had a couple of 17 and 19 in early in the year, but 38 and 51. I mean, his upside week to week is just off the charts. He runs a little bit, doesn't run a ton, but he is a tried and true pocket passer. And James has to be thrilled getting him, I think, in the 4th round. Let me look.
Yeah, he got him.
410, Mr. Irrelevant.
Mr. Irrelevant.
Justin Herbert. That's just great. Great job, James. That was nice.
Well, just one of those guys that falls through the cracks. I mean, yeah, same with everybody else. Yeah, no one expected out of him, and sure enough.
Happens every year, and he also stacked him this year with the trade for Austin Eckler, who's been the RB3, which even I was feeling good about Eckler, but not RB3 good about Eckler this year. I mean, he's been awesome.
Yeah,
and he's really not getting carries. I mean, he a couple of weeks he had 17 and 15, but other weeks he's had 9, 11, 6. It's all about the targets for him. He's getting consistent targets. He's got 3 receiving touchdowns on top of 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns. So he's been awesome. Great move for James getting him in that trade, and he's needed it because McCaffrey has not been on the team since week 3, and that is probably what's kept him afloat at this point because I think Mixon was banged up for a couple weeks as well. So Eckler, on top of having some other decent players out there for running backs, I mean, this has been good for James's team, and this is testing his depth, which I always say how important depth is in this league, and it shows every single year, and he's done a great job of making sure that this team stays afloat through some injuries. And another guy that's not really injured, but kind of just disappointing and frankly not really it's hard to start this guy right now is Tyler Lockett. He had a couple of just insanely good weeks to start off the year. He had weeks of 23 and 24, and then ever since then he's had 3, 2, 5, 3, and 1. It's been a rough sled, and it's not even that he's not getting targets. He had a 10-target week. He had a 7-target week, a 5-target week. It's just not turning into anything, and Geno Smith probably doesn't help the cause. As I think last week he may have lost because of Tyler Lockett in a close game. And, this is a guy that James was probably counting on throughout this year, but just kind of has fallen out of the picture here in recent weeks. But quickly talking, yeah, go ahead.
Certainly not quarterback proof.
No, he less than DK for sure. And one of the guys that's kind of filled in that space for him has been Emanuel Sanders, who I had literally no interest in whatsoever at any point during the offseason, and who showed up and been pretty much a stud since week 3. He's had 21, 8, 17, and 9. So that's pretty much just an immediate replacement for Tyler Lockett. So once again, a great depth pickup for James, and one of those reasons that this team is 5-2. So.
Yeah, he could be Lord of the Rings Part 3, Return of the King over here.
Return of the King.
He might, he's a team to watch for the rest of the season.
He's scary.
If McCaffrey gets back and stays healthy, I think you're going to be looking for a really strong, title push from the Lambs.
Yeah, we didn't even really mention CeeDee Lamb or Mike Evans or any of these other quality players. He's a good team for sure.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and move on to the Swallows at number 3. Has the 2nd most points in the league and the 5th hardest schedule. And he's 30 points behind me at first. So he just needs one more win to get there. So he's in striking distance for sure to being the top team. Cooper Kupp, dude, I didn't see this coming. I mean, I knew that there was going to be probably an uptick for Cooper Kupp with Matt Stafford there, but holy shit. He's wide receiver 1. He's been unstoppable in these first 7 weeks, and I don't see it slowing down. Do you?
No, I do not. And I don't know if going up against Jalen Ramsey in practice every week makes you a better wide receiver, but he's crushing it. And I'll be the first to say I was wrong about that situation. I thought. Getting rid of Goff or Stafford, I always thought Stafford was overrated personally. But
really? I guess the opposite of me.
I just never liked him. He's just one of those guys.
I don't even think I've ever heard you say that.
Yeah, I know. I've
Wow.
secretly been holding that in for
I
a
have
long
felt
time.
the
But
complete opposite way. I feel like he's underrated.
yeah, he just comes off to me like this douchey guy that like puts on this show, but he's a real douche. But I just like I don't know, just never liked him. Just this
I
something
don't
about his
see this at
face.
all. I
Just
literally see
just
none of
want
this.
to punch his face.
I mean, punchable faces, that's a whole different discussion, but I think he's pretty good, and I've always thought he was pretty underrated. I mean, he's had a quality career. I mean, even if you ask, I remember I think there was a Aaron Rodgers segment on the Pat McAfee show where he was talking about Matt Stafford, and he was like, "Dude, this guy was doing shit that like Pat Mahomes is being like, gargled over. Basically, it's like all these sidearm passes and no look and all that shit. Like he's like, yeah, Matt Stafford's been doing this for like 8 years now. It's like, is it like nobody in the NFL gives him the time of the day because he plays for the fucking Lions, but he's looked awesome since he's moved over, and it's a perfect fit for them. And right now, it's looking like they are winning that trade pretty handily. Obviously, you don't know what they're going to do with those draft picks, but Jared Goff looks like a bag of crap, and
Sure.
it looks good for Cooper Kupp. Most importantly, another breakout guy too in the same realm as Cooper Kupp, a similar type of player actually too. It's Debo for the 49ers. He was good his rookie year. I think he was like in the wide receiver like 30 range, and got hurt most of last year. Didn't really have much opportunity last year, and he's been on fire this season. On pretty much has taken over as that number one option. Even when Kittle and Eyuk, like whatever Eyuk is, still he's going to be the number one option, right? Like when Kittle comes back, still.
Yeah, I don't foresee that changing. Yeah, that even with Kittle there, I don't think it makes much of a difference. He doesn't need that many targets to be productive. I think he's had games where he hasn't had that many, and he still put up numbers. So,
this man, he's had a bunch of targets. He's averaging. So he's had here. I'll just run him down. He's had 12, 8, 10, 12, 9, and 11. So that hasn't been the issue.
I have him on my team, and I thought he had less. I'm very sorry.
His numbers for points were 23, 10, 5, 28, 13, and 15. So he's been as rock solid as you can get. He's actually wide receiver 7 on the year. So, I mean, these were guys, both of these guys, Kupp and Debo, were probably viewed as wide receiver 2s heading into the year for him at best. And they're both wide receiver 1s on top of having, other quality players on his team, Chase Claypool, Terry McLaurin. It's been a really pleasant surprise for the Swallows. We'll put it that way. He's also surviving some big injuries. He's 5-2. Waller's been banged up. Antonio Brown has had a couple of weeks where he's been in and out of the lineup. Logan Thomas has been banged up. DJ Chark's out for the year. Gus Edwards is out for the year. Cam Akers is out for the year. So he's still 5-2, second most points in the league with all of these injuries. You got to just clap your hands for that, because that is about as good of a job managing this team through injuries as you could possibly do. And then he's also had a couple guys that he probably counted on early in the year that really haven't done what they've needed to do, specifically Miles Sanders. He ain't done shit. He's been bad.
No.
And, yeah. I mean, that offense is a fucking joke right now, but, like, he has not done anything worthwhile at this point, and frankly, like for Vince's team, he desperately is going to need some of these running backs that he had drafted this year, whether it be Trey Sermon or Javonte Williams, start kind of taking over. If he wants to keep this run going, Javonte's been fine. He's serviceable. He gets his 8, 9 points a game. James Conner's actually been pretty good this year as well, in limited work. But he's got to get these two guys to continue to play well if this is going to hold together. Because right now, the team seems to be the receivers doing the majority of the work, and then the running backs kind of just going along for the ride, it seems like.
Yeah, he definitely has, I would say, one of the best wide receiving corps by far. We weren't sure about Debo going into the season, and I was one of those people that took a chance on him in redraft, and I know a lot of people questioned my strategy in that league, but yeah, he ended up panning out really well, and he's been a success for my team. I'm sure Deebo's going to be success for years to come. And I remember Vince almost was contemplating the idea of trading him at one point. So that's something that I wish I would have capitalized on when I had the chance.
Yeah, so Vince has 4 receivers in the top 20 that I can see right now, and one of them a surprise one too that I didn't even put in this graphic was Christian Kirk. He's been pretty solid too. He's had 4 weeks over 10 points. Very serviceable guy that really hasn't done anything up until this season. So it's just another nice find. So the Chase Claypool has been banged up and hasn't really done, it hasn't lived up to his potential at this point. But he's another guy who you get this guy good to go, and this receiving core is scary. Like, it's one of the best by far.
Yeah, he does. He's done really well drafting his wide receivers, so I'll give him that.
And they've been, you're right too. Most of these guys have been drafted. I mean, he drafted Claypool in the 3rd round, Terry McLaurin, I believe, in the 3rd or the 2nd. I can't remember on that one. Great drafting. So we'll keep going. We got the Battle Axes at number 2. This is the first of the 2 6-1 teams. He's had 972 points for, and by far the least amount points against. He's had 745. That being said, he's at the 3rd most points, so it's not like he's staying afloat because of these low point numbers. So one of these other crazy bomber stats that I seem to put in, he's only 5 more points than the Bombers. Who was 2 and 5, and Scavelli is 6 and 1. So it's just unbelievable. Like, it just once again goes to show how level this league is, and just how hard it is to win in this league. You have to be putting up numbers if you want to win. So Scavelli has been putting up the numbers, and most of those numbers have come from a one man named Derrick Henry, who is God. This man is sick. I mean, he's got to be one of the best running backs. Like when you watch him, you just know he's gonna get 5 yards. Like, it's just like there's like no chance this guy gets stopped unless like some offensive lineman just totally fucks up or something bad like happens behind the line of scrimmage. This man is gonna get his 5 yards, and you just got to get out of the way.
Yeah, and simple. Defenses by the 4th quarter, like, I don't want to hit this. This guy keeps hitting me, and it fucking hurts.
I remember there was the game last week. I forgot who it was, but I think it was Eric Reed or I forgot who it was. But anyway, this man had Derrick Henry just running directly at him, open field. He's a safety, tiny guy, and he just sat there and just ate it. He just fucking took it, because that's all you can do. You can't tackle him. Like, if you run into him straight, you're going to disintegrate. Like, you'll literally get murdered. So, like, he didn't even go towards him. He just stood there and just wrapped his legs. But the fact that he stood there is just, that man deserves a Purple Heart. I mean, that is, this guy.
I didn't miss that. I wish I would have seen that.
Yeah, I'll have to find it. Maybe I can put it in the chat later on. But this guy is sick. And he has, not only that, he's getting like 29 carries a game. He's had games of 35, 39, or 30, sorry, not 39, 35, 33, 29, 29, 28. I mean, that's just fantasy gold. And he's had games of 42 points, 34 points, 42 points, and 24 points. So Scavelli, I tried to trade for Derrick Henry like 2 years ago before the big breakout. Scavelli said, no, I'm going to hang on to him. And this is why Scavelli is good at football.
This is why,
This is why, because he knows that even though, maybe he didn't break out yet, Scavelli knows his talent. He's always been able to identify the talent, and is always able to identify value. And this is why Scavelli is good.
Well, I don't know if there's, at least the last few years, that there was a question about Derrick Henry's talent. It was more that how long he was going to be able to keep this pace up.
Do you remember, Alex, when there was a time where he split carries with Deion Lewis? Why was that a thing?
Yeah.
Why?
It just, I know a lot of teams were trying to go with the, double-headed monster approach.
Lightning and fire or whatever.
Yeah, and they're just like, just keep getting Derrick Henry the ball. I mean, one of these days it's gonna, not work out where he's just gonna. I mean, you can't keep that up forever, and I'm sure we've already said that a few years already, but just keep putting him in your lineup until he finally, shows sign of wear and tear. But he does work really hard on his body training. From the things I've seen, it's just unreal. So yeah, it's just one of the things that we'll just keep on keeping on until he doesn't do it anymore. But good for him.
I gotta be honest. I don't think he's gonna I don't think the carries mean anything to him. I think I've used this word already once. So I guess I'm gonna use it twice. He's a unicorn. This guy is like we've never seen anybody like this. So there is a chance that this man, bearing like major injury, like it would have to be a crazy injury. Like in my mind, he's just one of those guys just gonna keep rolling. Like he's just a freaking truck, and I don't even think because he's so big. I feel like yes, he takes a lot of workload. But I don't think he takes a lot of punishment. I think he's always the one giving it out.
Yeah.
It's not as much like I'd be worried if Austin Eckler was getting 29 carries a game. I'm not really worried about Derrick Henry taking that kind of workload because he didn't take a huge workload early in his career either. Like he kind of split that time like we talked about. I believe his first 2 years he was running back 38 and 25. And he only had his first 3 years of his career, he never had more than 200 carries in a year. So, like, he's still kind of fresh from that standpoint. So, I'm just a huge Derrick Henry fan. Anywho, we'll move on. Mike Williams, massive breakout season. I'm pretty sure nobody saw this coming. He's wide receiver 9. Has had weeks of 14, 15, 27, 29, and then 1 and 2 sprinkled in for a couple other bust weeks, but he's been electric. And I wanted to just take this time to bring up a trade that happened with Mike Williams a few years ago. I think people forgot about this one.
Oh.
Dustin Gilchrist had Mike Williams. He traded Mike Williams and a second-round pick for Phillip Lindsay and a second-round pick. So essentially trading Mike Williams for Phillip Lindsay. And that does not look good anymore. That is a rough go. And a huge hit for Scavelli. And this is one of these things that with Scavelli, we always look back and we're like, God damn, how did he do it again? He did it again.
He did it again.
Son of a bitch.
It's foresight. It's really what it is.
It's just patience. He's so patient.
Yeah.
This man is patient.
He knows. He's got that crystal ball, and he is not going to share what he knows. He's going to keep to himself, and
he has his sources.
Yeah, he just has his sources, and they're
not
of this earth. He just knows, and good for him. Yeah.
So he's done all of this with Kittle being out for the last 3 weeks, and he's done all this without Allen Robinson. I don't even know if he's on Earth. He could be on another planet. That man has just completely disintegrated. He's wide receiver 64. 64. Yeah. Wide receiver 6. I can't. I had Allen Robinson for years. He's always been one of my favorite players in the league, but that offense is such a mess from a passing game perspective. Like I feel bad for Allen Robinson. I hope he gets traded.
I mean, I don't know why they would keep him at this point if he's not even really being used. Or
you might as well just don't trade him. To me, if they don't trade him, that would be one of the biggest mistakes that the Bears could possibly make. Like, you're not going to bring him back. He's not going to sign with you. You can't franchise him again. Right. So, what reason would there be to keep him around? I think he's the one guy out of all the trade deadline guys. Like, if this guy isn't traded, Ryan Pace for the Bears needs to just get fired because that's just embarrassing.
Quick speculation on where he's going to go.
I've seen all kinds of different stuff. I've seen Houston. I've seen people talking about Cleveland, trading Odell Beckham, just all this random shit. But I really don't know. The Packers would be insane. I don't know if they'd do it.
Yeah,
they never do it.
To trade him to a division rival would be, and especially if he starts doing well after that. the Bears fans would be, busting down the GM's door at that point.
Yeah, I mean, then have to face him for the rest of the year. Nobody wants that. But yeah, I feel like he's just he's got to get traded. I just don't know where, but there's definitely places out there that he could go. And then Russell Wilson has been hurt for the last few weeks, and he still keeps winning. He's had Jameis Winston, he's got Sam Darnold, and Zach Wilson, who's out now, but he's got depth. So I mean, this team is good. There's just no way around it. Scavelli knows value, and I mean, even though he's had the least amount of points, he's still putting them up. So he's one of those guys you got to watch out for. And then we'll finish with Yo Soy, me at the top. First in points and 8th in points against. I think it's mostly because I played you and Tibbs already. That seems to help the cause. The only team with 1,000 as of right now. That will definitely change.
Yeah, you deserve to be there. Even despite playing us, you are where you are for a reason. And there's other teams that have played both Tibbs and I, and they are nowhere even close to there. So,
I'd say the big reason is Brady. I love Brady as much as the next Bucs fan, but I did not see QB1 coming. He's been incredible, and I owe most of my big numbers just to that, because he's putting up like 30 and 40 points a week. So it's just insane. On a more sour note, where is Brandon Eyuk? Somebody tell me.
We don't know.
I've seen him on the field, but what does he do in between the weeks? Like, what is he doing? Just eating like Whataburger? Like, what is this guy doing?
Carmen San Diego over here. I don't know.
This guy literally went from being like one of the most electric rookies last year to being, apparently he's out of shape. Apparently he's not running good routes. I'm so sour with him that I haven't even watched. Like, I usually, when my players are playing bad, I'll find like tape on them so I can see like why. I don't even want to watch him. He's like one of those guys that I'm just so sick of, like, on my roster, because I'm like, oh, I could start Brandon Eyuk this week. I'm like, wait a second, no, I can't. He sucks. Yeah. Like, what am I? Like, I can't. Like, he's got the name value. Yes, he's got the name value. I can't even play him.
He must have banged one of the coach's daughters, and that's the only explanation.
He must have done something
horrible.
I mean, I don't know what it is, but like everything I keep hearing from like, sleepers updates and stuff, it's like, oh yeah, we still believe in him. He's still got all the chances in the world and he's getting targets. Like every week he gets targets, and it just amounts to nothing. So I'm so confused. He was easily my biggest disappointment this year. On the flip side, James Robinson is thriving again. And
who would have thought?
With Saquon being out again, I have needed James Robinson again. So I am very happy with my James RB1 season again. And I'm just going to ride that James Robinson. He's never going to leave my team. I just love him too much. He's a great kid.
I remember you hated him at one point because they drafted Travis Etienne, and you were like,
trust me, I was on record at least 12 times on this podcast being pissed at fucking Urban Meyer. And I still hate Urban Meyer. But the fact that Travis Etienne is hurt has truly given James Robinson another year in my 3-year window to thrive. So I'm very, very happy about that. Along those same lines, my depth has been tested. I've had Chubb out. I've had Saquon out. I've had other receivers out. Sterling Shepard, Kenny Golladay, among others. So all that depth that I've been trying to acquire over all these years has actually helped. So, all these Robert Woods and Adam Thielen trades, and of course the Devontae Adams trade, just keep building as deep of a roster I can. I think it's definitely working. But I don't know how much more it can take basically at this point, because we're running low on players to start at this point. Especially with bye weeks coming in. Like, I've been like, do I have to start Jalen Reagor this week? That's where I'm at now. Like, it's like, do I have to? Because I don't want to. But if he gets a touchdown, I'm going to look like an asshole if I don't. So, yeah. And then Robert Woods has bounced back after a little bit of a shaky start. He had a couple of bad games, and then Cooper was blowing up. So everybody's like, okay, is Robert Woods dead now? Turns out that Matt Stafford can definitely support both of them, and I'm very happy about it. So that is your 10 through 1 standings, and that's not power rankings. That's how it stands as of right now in our league. And we are halfway through the season. So it's been a fun first half. There's been all kinds of shit happening. Definitely no shortage of storylines. But we have another half to go, and I'm very intrigued to see how what James has called the muck ends up playing out. We have a bunch of 2-5 teams and a bunch of 5-2 teams, and who knows? Some of those might flip flop. I mean, it's going to be very interesting. But Alex, I want to thank you for being on this podcast on short notice and
yes,
delays elsewhere in your life. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I put way too much time into work for me to not stop what I'm doing to go do a Dynasty podcast. So I'm glad I was able to.
Yeah, absolutely love to hear that. And like I mentioned previously, we try to do these podcasts as much as we can, but this was a nice one to do right here at the middle of the season. So until next time, we will see you and enjoy Week 8 action.
All right. Thank you.